Welcome one and all. Kings of War Battle Report. Abyssal Dwarfs, Undead, 2,250 points. Red hot, sizzling action in the ice-cold, snowy wastes. Hello there and welcome. And let's not forget Mr. Arrow on our journey here. Okay, so, welcome everyone. This is a live battle report for a change. Normally I only do the tournament reports live, and then the battle reports in a pre-recorded format, but we're going crazy today because I enjoy living dangerously. So, if you're watching this live, feel free to drop a comment in the chat down there, and it's time to dive straight in. So I've got my army list right here. I'm going to go through it in a moment. Say hello if you're in the chat right now, and I'll reverse the chat occasionally. Now, this is a game full of twists and turns and a few comical mistakes, and hopefully no rules mistakes, although if there are any, I'm sure at least one person in the chat will be on them like a shot, immediately pointing them out. So let's look. So it's push scenario, and we rolled d3 to see how many push tokens each side would get, and there are going to be 3 on each side, plus the 1 in the middle there. So I've decided to try out a few different Abyssal Dwarf things. You'll notice a lot of my lists are very similar. I've got the 2 fast, annoying characters. I've got the big wall of defense 6. Gone for a few different things in this one. So at this points level, you'd expect maybe 2 mortars, but there's only actually 1 here. So as we start on the left flank, we've got a horde of decimators. It's the first time I've had a horde of decimators available, so they are in there. And I've given them Blessing of the Gods, so they are elite, which will make them extra tasty at shooting and combat. We move down, and I haven't abandoned this big wall of defense 6, but there are some slight changes. So we've got the Greater Obsidian Golem, and we've got the 2 hordes of Lesser Obsidian Golems, but each of them is upgraded with the Charnox upgrade. So they have a decent shooting attack now. And then to back that up, we've got 2 Ironcasters behind them with Surge. So of course the idea being to use the Charnox to flame people and then surge into them afterwards, which in theory could be good. We'll see how it goes though, because it's a decent chunk of points invested in the upgrade and the 2 Ironcasters for that purpose. Then we've also got a Hexcaster back here, represented by a severed head on a base. So the Hexcaster model isn't actually available yet. I have pre-ordered it though as part of the Abyssal Dwarf Vanguard booster set. So standing in for that right now, we've got a severed head on a base. So the Hexcaster, and this one has weakness. You can give them Hex or weakness. And I thought with all this defense 6 around, even my slightly less defensive units are defense 5. So having weakness in there might be useful to make it more difficult for the enemy to damage my units. Then we've got a troop of gargoyles as usual, can't leave home without those. And over on the right, we've got Morty the Mortar. We've got Regiment of Immortal Guard. We've got Susan, obviously, Basusu has to be in there. We've got half-breeds with the boots of striding. Of course, they have to be in there as well. Nice cheap upgrade for them. And another Regiment of Immortal Guard. So the Immortal Guard, in push scenario, I like to deploy one of them out on one flank immediately, pretty much, because it forces the enemy to put stuff over there. Otherwise, I'll just pile up all the tokens on them and just march them across the battlefield. And if they haven't put anything significant over there, they're not going to take them out. You can't just use chaff to take out Immortal Guard, really, because they're just too tough, and they regenerate now as well, which makes them even better for that purpose. So back them up, we've got half-breeds and Basusu over here, but you'll notice this flank is quite easy to abandon. I've only really got these Immortal Guard here that aren't fast or disposable. These ones are carrying tokens. These ones are heading for the centre, but we'll go through that in a minute. We get to the overall strategy. So on the side of the Undead, we have a Soul Reaver Cavalry Regiment, and I think they have Potion of the Caterpillar. We've got a Revenant Cavalry Troop directly in front of them to make sure nothing's charging them. And you'll notice some of these models are mine, by the way, which were borrowed by my opponent for this game. There's a Catapult there at the back. 2 regiments of Soul Reaver Infantry, very hard-hitting. There's a Death Pack, which are very chaff-like. There's a Lich King, or a Leech King, however you want to pronounce that. And over on this side, there is a regiment of Skeleton Archers. There is a Flying Pharaoh. I think that's the Flying Pharaoh. Oh no, he's not. The Flying Pharaoh is actually over here. He's not even in the deployment photo. but he is, or is he? I got him in there. I think he's behind this tower. There's a flying pharaoh who's not in any of the pictures. There he is, just poking out there. So there's the flying pharaoh. Then there are two necromancers over here. I think there's one back there and one here. I think that's them. Then there's a horde of revenants, and I think they have the brew of strength. And there is a legion of zombies with the hammer of measured force, which is of course very scary to any defense 6 units that I've got around, which is about half my army. So they are not going to be going near those zombies. That would be probably a very silly idea. So there is the token in the centre. And as we look at this side of the battlefield, so what my strategy is over here, no tokens are going to be contested in this area. So I don't want to invest a lot. What I want to do with this regiment of Immortal Guard that's carrying 2 tokens already is push straight forward past this wall and head for this one. There's no cavalry threatening them, so there's nothing horrifically fast on this side of the table. So I'm using the half-breeds as a bit of a deterrent to try and slow them down in coming forwards a bit. So it'll give me time to go and pick up that token with the Immortal Guard, push my golems forward, and get into a face-off with the Soul Reaver infantry, try and have a bit of a duking it out with them, casting weakness on them to make it hard to chew through. And then these guys pick up the token and then head over in this direction, which is where my enemy has all of his tokens on those zombies over there, all 3. I've got 1 on this horde of decimators, and immediately after deployment I thought, was this really such a good idea, putting a token on this horde of decimators, because they're not really too supported over on this flank. I was thinking about maybe putting another defense 4 unit over here with the zombies around, with them in mind, something like the half-breeds. But then I thought, you know what, I could actually use them on the other flank to hold up the enemy cavalry and be a bit of a deterrent to them. So there's not much support down here for the decimators, and one of the reasons there's a token on them is because, you may remember one of my tournament reports, I played against a horde of decimators, and it was incredibly easy to avoid them for the entire game. I'm not sure if they even managed to, they maybe got 1 shot off during the whole game, but they didn't really contribute to the fight very much. So I'm thinking, put a token on them, the enemy will actually want to engage them and come into range. And if they want to attack me, they're going to have to come in range to get shot, because they've only got 2 lots of Surge 6 around here. So if they want to get in range to have a reasonable chance of actually surging into the decimators, then they're going to have to put themselves in a position to get shot first, which I would be quite happy with. And then the Greater Golem is going to go forward and provide a bit of a threat for the flanks of any units that are coming forwards towards the decimators. And we'll see how the middle goes. We'll see if any other units end up coming this way. So 2 of the tokens there on the Immortal Guard, and the other one on the decimators. All 3 piled up on the Zombie Legion. So we'll see how this goes. Turn 1. So I go first, and the half-breeds push forward. They move into charge range of the Revenant Cavalry, I think. Or possibly out of, they may be out of charge range of both of them at the moment, actually. Susan moves up behind this wall to avoid being charged by Soul Reaver infantry. And yeah, I think the half-breeds are out of charge range of both the cavalry units right now. That was the goal here. But, quite comically, when I was positioning this unit, I completely forgot that there's a flying pharaoh behind this tower, because obviously the tower was obscuring him, so there's not even a picture of him. Even on the photo, he's hiding. So I forgot he was there, so he's actually within charge range of the half-breeds, but totally forgot he existed. So that's a good lesson for people. Always look behind the terrain when you're moving your units to make sure nothing's there. And it's funny though, because I actually positioned Basusu so that it couldn't see her afterwards. So one of those things, you put a unit down and then you just forget about it. And in the middle, you can see that this unit of golems has been surged forwards, because this is the only one that had no chance of possibly being flanked by anything, I think. And this one has been surged forward as well. Or maybe I didn't surge this one because it would have just been staring at the wall. But usually what I consider, especially when I only have 1 Ironcaster, when I'm only surging 1 unit forward, who's the least likely to end up in a bad position, or who's guaranteed not to, is a better way of putting it. But there weren't really too many flank threats around here. So pushing both these forward with a bit of surge. Gargoyles not committing themselves yet. They're just staying out of sight of the catapult, is the most important thing to them, because they will die and they're going to be useful roadblock at some point. The decimators move forward a little bit, I think. I'm not sure actually whether they moved, but they're just chilling there, but mostly just waiting for the enemy. And you can see that Susan is in quite an annoying spot to deal with. Nothing can attack her right now, so anyone that moves forward is in danger of being charged by Susan, which gives someone something to worry about. Ideally, I don't want to charge Basusu into Soul Reaver cavalry or infantry, because they could quite easily kill her on the countercharge. So she's there more as a deterrent, and if she has to hop behind enemy lines at some point, then that's going to be a useful role for her. Turn 1 for the Undead. So I think I actually blocked up my mortar's line of sight in turn 1 as well, which is quite funny. All the units I wanted to shoot at, I accidentally blocked line of sight to. So that was another comical mistake there, in addition to forgetting about the flying pharaoh behind there. Undead turn. So this big infantry blob with the tokens are moving forward. And the flying pharaoh obviously charges into the flank of the half-breeds. My opponent probably would have preferred the front charge here, because it would have pinned them in place and prevented them from getting to anything over there. But the side will have to do. I'm quite confident though, flying pharaohs only have about 5 attacks, I think. And these guys position themselves in the difficult terrain in case they get charged, presumably. And the Death Pack are just screening the Soul Reaver infantry, who are being a bit conservative at the moment. Susan can see quite a few units now, so she's going to have charge options next turn. And at this stage I'm thinking, okay, this doesn't look too bad for my plan actually, because the golems could charge in there. I've also got gargoyles that could fly and block in units, and these guys could move behind that fight towards the token and start heading in the direction I mentioned earlier. So when your opponent doesn't push forward, it does give you the opportunity in this scenario to kind of push into them and then have another unit following up collecting the central token, which can be crucial in this. Then we've got some shooting going on, and 1 damage is actually done to the greater golem. And then a bit of damage done to these Immortal Guard carrying the tokens. I think that was from either the catapult or a blizzard. I think the Lich King has a blizzard spell. I think both the Necromancers have Bane Chant, possibly, in addition to their Surge. In fact, one of them has Weakness and one of them has Bane Chant, I think. I think that's right. And, oh, there's the Blizzard, just chips on another point of damage. So, a bit of damage on them, but they're not worried because they can regenerate, of course. And look at this. The Cursed Pharaoh, 4 damage, needed 10 to waver, and that's exactly what happens. So that is a bit of a nightmare, because I'm not sure whether the half-breeds would have liked their chances killing him on the countercharge. They would have had a go, possibly, but that would have left their flank open to the units here, of course. But what they can't do now is they can't provide the same kind of deterrent that they were before, because they're stuck with a unit attacking their flank, and the fact that they're wavered means that my opponent can just happily not worry about them for a turn. So I'm not going to be able to do much with the Immortal Guard on their own, because they're out of range of that unit here. So if I wanted next turn to charge my half-breeds into the Revenant's cavalry there, which maybe, with the Soul Reavers right behind it, might not have been the best option, but it's still possible though, because if they charge in there, kill that unit quite easily, and then Soul Reavers head in, kill the half-breeds. I've still got the Immortal Guard there who could then charge into the Soul Reavers and tie them up for another turn. But as it is, they're stuck, so I'm not going to be able to do any charging over here. And maybe Basusu would have to get involved. But that's not what's going to happen. I'm actually going to look into abandoning this flank now, because these units are right behind each other. They're the same height as the half-breeds. So if I stay where I am, they're not going to be able to double charge the half-breeds. So I'm not too concerned there just yet. It's still annoying though, and it does disrupt my plans. So turn 2 for the Abyssal Dwarfs, and the Immortal Guard have just tilted themselves inwards a bit, just in case. For example, these guys get out the way, allowing the Soul Reavers to charge in there, which would be a more likely kill. Then, if they don't kill them, the Immortal Guard would then have a flank on the Soul Reavers. Just leaving things open to give your opponent less options is always a good idea. And the Death Pack is charged by the Greater Golems, who I think Charnoxed the unit first and were then surged in. So they moved close to them, so that when the gargoyles charged, they wouldn't slide down and take up the whole frontage. Or I may have Charnoxed the Soul Reavers, actually, behind them. I think that's what I did, actually. So Charnox there, gargoyles charged into the death pack, and then the lesser obsidian golems will then surge the rest of the way into combat. And these Immortal Guard are turning this way to face the token, which is where they're heading next turn. And these ones, okay, another terrible mistake coming up now. These golems don't need to be this far forward. They should have been back about 2 millimeters, which would allow, next turn, this unit to move at the double and pick up that token immediately. But what I'm going to have to do next turn now is move this unit backwards so they can actually get to it, which is very annoying because I wanted this unit to move out the double, get onto that token first, and then this unit head over in this direction. But that's going to take me another turn because of that tiny little 2 millimeter positioning mistake there. Hexcaster puts weakness on those Soul Reaver infantry there, and the way that I've overrun with the gargoyles here means that this is the only unit that can charge the golems, and they now have weakness on them. So they'd be making a hindered charge with weakness into a defense 6-17 unit. That would be a bad idea. So we'll see what they do there. And here, the Decimators move forward a little bit again. Not quite to within range to shoot, though. They can't reach that far yet. So the fact that I can't shoot means that that unit is about 13 inches away at this point. So I'm quite confident that they are not going to be surged into my Decimators at this stage, because, as I said, they've got Surge 6 and 6. And it would be very, very risky to attempt that from this position, because, of course, you've got the Greater Golem staring right at that flank. So that's my plan anyway, because he's turned inwards. However, you're going to notice in a minute that another mistake has been made. So turn 2 for the Undead, and I'll go back to this picture and I'll exclusively reveal what the mistake is here. I accidentally didn't measure the charge distance of these archers properly. So they actually have a front charge on the Greater Golem, which is going to block up his frontage, of course. Probably going to get the archers killed pretty soon, but it is going to take away the threat of him in the flank. So a little bit of a mistake there. He just needed to be a tiny bit further back, and they wouldn't have been able to reach him. At least not without surge, and if they're surging the archers, they would have had nothing to surge any of these units into combat. So turn 2. And the Revenants decide to go for it. They're going to try and get that surge in there. And the archers do, of course, charge the Greater Golem after his positioning blunder. I think if he'd pivoted a tiny bit less, then they would have been out as well. And the Revenant Cavalry charge into the Half-Breeds, which I'm okay with, because I think it's a hindered charge. They might be okay there. And the Soul Reaver Cavalry into the Immortal Guard. I'm not 100% sure whether they'll die or not. They do have really good nerve, so slightly below average roll and they should be fine. We'll see. Catapult, a bit more damage on the token carrying unit, but they're not concerned yet. And the Necromancers, they go for that surge and they actually succeed. So the odds were slightly against it, but they succeed with the surge, and why not take the risk, because the Greater Obsidian Golem was blocked up. So why not go for it? You're going to be in range to be shot next turn wherever you end up, so why not? And the Half-Breeds are actually killed, even though they're only up to 7 damage. So it was a nice juicy roll of at least 8 to get rid of them. So they're gone. And the Immortal Guard are dead. They take 12 damage. Soul Reaver Cavalry are very dangerous, so that's not too much of a ridiculous surprise there. And the Soul Reaver Infantry here charged into the Gargoyles and killed them. And the other ones backed away, because they don't want to get charged here. But I'm actually quite pleased about this, because this allows me to focus on this one unit that's already taken a single point of damage. I'm going to be able to potentially move into position to Charnox them, and then be surged into combat, which would also allow me to avoid this difficult terrain, because as it stands, if I just charge straight forward, I think if I just charge straight in, I would have to go in a straight line because I can make it into them without pivoting. So I think I would have to go into the difficult terrain. But if I pivot them and move this way, and then Charnox them and then surge them in, I wouldn't have to worry about the hindrance there. And down here, the Decimators take 8 wounds. Oh dear. Not looking too healthy there, but we'll see what I can do about this situation. Also, what's unfortunate about my positioning here with the Greater Obsidian Golem is because he's actually got this wall, this tower behind him. So he's now not in a position to go backwards, turn sideways, and move and be surged into this flank. If he was facing slightly more forwards, or he'd been slightly more this way perhaps, then the option would have been there to do that, because he would have been able to back away further, turn, and then bonk. I think he could have actually charged straight into that flank, because I think he can actually see it from where he is. So if he'd been positioned a little bit better, a bit more towards this way, then that tower wouldn't have prevented him moving back an inch and then charging into the flank there. He wouldn't even have needed surging. But as it is, he doesn't have the space to angle himself to get in there and clip them. So it's another thing you've got to be careful with. What is behind you? Is it going to prevent you from withdrawing an inch? And is that going to be bad news? Turn 3 for the Abyssal Dwarfs. So I decide, you know what, I need this Archer Regiment dead, and the Greater Golem doesn't have that many attacks. He's probably not going to kill them on his own in one go, so let's bring Basuzan in just to make absolutely sure they die. And of course they get double wand. So they're going to be stuck there for another turn, and that is the ultimate nightmare. So the Golem is now tied up again, and now Susan is stuck there as well. However, a bit more luck over here. The plan succeeded with the Lesser Obsidian Golems, moved them into position. Charnox, Surge, Charge, and the Soul Reaver Infantry are toast. So there's just one unit of them there now. And you can see this unit had to move backwards because of the mistake I made earlier with the positioning, so that this unit could move on to the objective. So these guys are a little bit undecided where they're going to go now. The fact that this combat went so well means they'll see what this unit can do to the golems next turn. If it's not a lot, then this unit might actually fancy their chances of heading this way to help out over there, because it's not looking great positionally on that side. And the Decimators countercharge into the Revenants, do 7 damage, but what really I should have done here, looking at this, the Decimators are within charge range of those zombies there. So what I could have done is just move backwards instead of countercharging. I don't think I could have moved backwards onto the difficult terrain to make this a hindered charge, but it would have prevented any thoughts of a double charge here. And it would have prevented any thoughts of a single charge followed by a surged charge, really. Because this unit is just so wide and there would have been nothing for this unit to contact. They would have had to move really far forward and then turn sideways, and with the move that they have, I don't think they would physically be able to be surged into the flank here. I don't think they would even have the option of being in the flank facing anyway, so they'd only be able to touch the flank rather than the front, so they wouldn't be able to do it. So I should have just gone backwards here instead of charging. That's always another thing to consider. If you've got a shooting unit, especially one carrying an objective, you want to just keep them alive, really, while the support isn't there yet. Not leave them in a position to get double charged. But again, it's one of those things, when you look at it with the naked eye, you might think, they might be out of range there. But with the new charge measuring rules, you're actually measuring from the corner now, so definitely in. So, what are the Undead going to do? Well, of course, they go for that double charge. They've got to try and get this unit dead, but I'm not too displeased with this, actually, because this charge is hindered. So it's not actually helping that much, the Zombie Legion charge, because they do have the Hammer of Measured Force, but this unit's already Defense 4. So it's just a hindered zombie charge, means they're hitting on 6s and wounding on 4s. So are they going to do many wounds? Is that going to contribute a lot? All it's doing, as far as I'm concerned, is shoving the Revenants into a position where I can charge them in the flank with the Greater Obsidian Golem next turn. So I'm not too displeased with that. Of course, if the zombies suddenly roll really well and do 5 extra wounds, I'll be very disappointed. Flying Pharaoh charged into one of the Ironcasters, trying to limit my surge capabilities. And the cavalry just moving forward into a position where they can contribute to the game, so I'm going to have to do something about them next turn. And the Soul Reavers have charged into the lesser golems here. So what kind of damage are they going to dish out? Well, the Necromancers, they put weakness on the greater golem, knowing that he's going to charge that unit next turn. So that's a good idea. Because even if they turn to face him, he'll still have the option to charge them in the flank. Or charge them in the front, should I say. Flank as it is now, but their front would be facing this way if they turn to look at him, of course. 2 damage on the Ironcaster. He's fine, though. Of course, he can't do any spells. And the Decimators do get killed. So the Revenants turn to face this way, face the oncoming threat, and the zombies are just chilling over there quite happily with the tokens, because they're in my half now. And they steal the token as well for Decimators, so they're holding 4 tokens. So I'm going to have to get rid of that unit now if I want to win the game. So my plans from here on out are going to be entirely focused on getting to that unit eventually. So what's the best way to do that? First of all, I'm going to have to abandon this area and not worry too much about it. And you can see here that the golems take 8 damage from the Soul Reaver infantry, but they're not worried about that. I'm quite confident I can take them out on the counter charge. At least waver them. And you never know though. And nice wide shot there. Right, my turn for what am I going to do looking at this wide shot here? This unit is going to start heading this way because I can't win the game just by holding this area. I've got 3 tokens, but my opponent has 4. So first of all, the Immortal Guard are going to start heading for enemy territory up there. And to prevent anything charging them, Susan is going to abandon the archers and come over here and block in the cavalry from charging anyone else. Especially this unit as they flee up there. And down here, this unit's going to head that way. I'm also going to charge the Revenants with the Greater Golem because I need to make a start on them ASAP. So, Golems heading that way. Abandon the archers. Greater Golem into the Revenants. And they take a lot, they've taken quite a lot of damage there. Were they actually damaged before then? I'm not sure, because I may have shot at them first and then surged this guy in. I think that's actually what I might have done. I think what I did was, let's see. I'm not sure whether I did actually. Maybe he just did really well with his attacks. I can't remember now. But I feel like I probably surged him in by moving him in this direction and then shooting at them, possibly with the Charnox on the golems on the hill, and then surging him the rest of the way. And down here you can see that I do waver the Soul Reavers, Soul Reaver infantry with this wounded unit of golems. So that's going to buy me another turn to finish them off, hopefully. The Mortar finally gets a hit in this game and wavers the Soul Reaver cavalry. A nice roll of 10 on the nerve check there. And I put weakness on them before that as well, assuming that they were going to be able to charge someone next turn. And Susan has landed there to prevent the Revenant cavalry from rear charging the Immortal Guard there. So that's her only purpose. She doesn't care about protecting the flank of them. And it's not looking too bad at the moment. We've started to turn it round a little bit, but we do need to get to this zombie unit. So what does my opponent have up his sleeve to deal with this? Turn 4. So you can see first of all that the archers are... They're not just charging into the flank of my golems. That would be a terrible idea. They're not going to get surged into the flank of the greater golem, because again that would be not the best idea. What they're going to do is turn to get into the front arc of the lesser golems and then use the Necromancer's Surge to get in and block them in for another turn. So that arch unit is the bane of my existence at the moment. After that terrible round of attacks and nerve roll on them, they are really blocking up my plans now. So Revenant cavalry into the flank of the golems, and the Soul Reaver infantry just staying there because they're wavered. And there's the archers got into position to be surged into the front. And the Soul Reaver cavalry just have to sit there because they're wavered. Necromancers surge the archers into the front of the golems, which is boxing them in, so I'm going to have to spend a turn killing them, and we don't have that many turns left. And up to 10 damage on these golems now, but the Revenants can't finish them off. The other Ironcaster takes 4 wounds from the Pharaoh, who's just jumping around attacking casters left and right. And here the Revenants put 4 damage onto the Greater Golem, or get him up to 4 damage if he didn't have any on him before. Whether he had 1 or whether that was healed. And not too bad that turn, other than these archers being annoying and still being alive, which I'm going to have to deal with now. Let's see what I've got in mind though. So, this unit, I'm feeling brave, so I think I'm just going to try and shoot them with the mortar again. 1 more hit and I should at least waver them again. So, I think I'm going to try that because I need to commit forces this way. So, turn 5. Susan goes up onto the hill to get into a position to threaten. This unit of golems kill the archers and then overrun. So, the only way they could put themselves in a terrible position from the overrun was by overrunning 6 inches, because looking at this now, they can no longer see the Revenants. So if the Revenants survive this turn, I'm not going to be able to double charge them next time, because their line of sight is obscured by the Greater Obsidian Golem. And of course they roll the 6 on the overrun. Because if I had not overrun, then the Revenants, if they survived, next turn instead of countercharging could have moved backwards, which would have just made my life difficult, because for this unit to reach them, then they would have had to have been surged, and that might not be an option if my Ironcasters keep getting attacked. So, 1 in 6 chance of them being in this terrible position, and that's exactly what happened. Because, let's see, look at that. Boom. Next, okay, weakness was cast on these guys in case they survived, and then the Greater Obsidian Golem gets them up to 16 damage, but can't finish them off yet, sadly. If they died here, I would have been feeling very, very confident right now. But they haven't. And the Soul Reaver infantry are dead, so this flank's looking good. So they just turn to face the Revenant cavalry there. The mortar finishes off the Soul Reaver cavalry. Boom. So the risk pays off there. They are toast, which allowed Susan to abandon that area and help out over here and be a threat at the end of the game. And it's looking okay, but we still need to chew through this and get to them. Otherwise, there's no chance of winning because they're holding so many tokens. If I hadn't put a token on the Decimators, it would be looking a lot more healthy right now, although I'm sure my opponent would have played it differently if the Decimators didn't have a token. He would have had to rethink where these units were attacking. Turn 5 for the Undead. So, the zombies move backwards a bit, just to get out of harm's way slightly. Revenant Cavalry will be hoping to finish them off this turn. Flying Pharaoh is running around attacking the Ironcasters again. And these 2 individuals are sitting behind this unit here. So, really, it's not that much of a speed bump, because of course you can charge through these units nowadays, because they're not mighty. So you can just totally ignore them. But we'll see. They'd be detrimental if I tried to overrun past the Revenants and didn't go very far. Or if I went really far and just had to stop an inch away from them. Or if I didn't go very far and was too far away to charge the zombies if they moved backwards again. If I would have to surge into the zombies, I wouldn't be able to land with my movement on top of these heroes. So they can be a roadblock to units, especially ones that have shambling. Can't go at the double. So, Ironcaster wavered again. So this Pharaoh is being a nuisance, but he's not killing anything right now. And a bit more damage done to the Greater Golem, but not much. Not enough to worry him. And these lesser Obsidian Golems are dead. And that's no surprise, really. But they've done their job. They've cleared the path for the Immortal Guard to escape with 2 tokens that they had at the start and 1 that they picked up from the centre. So it's all about this area, really, because those guys are pretty safe now. Turn 6 for the Abyssal Dwarfs. So, now, because that charge was blocked off, I wasn't able to get this unit into the Revenants as well. So, Greater Golem, charge. Pasusu, charge. These guys, just chilling. So we kill off the Revenant Horde, and then all we need to do next turn is just kill a zombie legion that hasn't taken any damage yet. Easy. So there's how it's looking, and this is turn 6 right now, so I need another turn, obviously. If there's turn 7, would I like my chances? Would I be able to get these units in there? Well, it depends how these units are positioned, whether this unit would be able to reach. Because I do have an Ironcaster alive. I have 2, but we'll see whether my opponent can kill one of them. And these Immortal Guard are perfectly safe. They're out of sight of the Revenant Cavalry carrying my tokens into opposition territory. But it might not matter to the outcome. Turn 6 for the Undead. So, they haven't done much here, just reposition a little bit. I don't think it's going to help them too much, though. Because I can just charge straight past them with the Greater Golem and Susan, and then these guys would be relying on a surge to get in there. However, I think my opponent actually starts trying to kill Ironcasters and succeeds this time. So the Revenants just move that way in case there's another turn, they might be able to attack them. Blizzard takes out one of the Ironcasters. Cursed Pharaoh takes out the other Ironcaster, so I've now got no surge options at all left on the table. And I wouldn't like my chances too much of killing the Unharmed Zombie Legion with just these 2, but it's still a possibility. Will there be a turn 7? No, there is no turn 7. So the zombies are going to win the day carrying 4 objectives, 4 tokens with them, and the Immortal Guard carrying 3. I can't actually see the other one on their base. It might be under this one, actually. And that is going to be that. So overall, I ended up killing more of my opponent's army than I lost, and it was looking really bad at one stage, but if that was in a tournament, that game, obviously it would have been bad because there were lots of very small positioning mistakes at the start, and of course the wonderful idea of forgetting that an enemy unit was there because it was behind a tower. And if it was in a tournament, though, I would be quite pleased because from early on in the game, it was looking like a lost cause. As soon as the half-breeds were charged by a unit that I'd forgotten about, and then the Greater Golem was blocked in by archers that I accidentally left him in range of. As soon as that happened, it was looking really bleak, but I did manage to kill a lot of units after that and get into a position where I still had a chance had there been a turn 7. So I wouldn't be too disappointed there because I killed quite a lot. So the way the army performed, I think it was actually quite good. The Decimators obviously were victims of a little bit of bad luck with a high surge roll, but again, they didn't need to be that far forward, really. I was maybe being a bit greedy with them, wanting to get them into the action when they could have sat back a bit and just let the enemy chill out here until my support arrived. And it was an uphill struggle with some of those little mistakes, though, like the Greater Golem here. And that's the main one, really, because those archers just delayed everything. And then the fact that I didn't kill the archers by double one-ing them, I think I needed about 5 on the dice to get rid of them, something like that. After Basusu and the Greater Golem both attacked the archers, and they didn't do that much damage between them, which was very disappointing. So, a little bit of a mistake there, a little bit of bad luck as well, and those archers possibly won the game for the Undead. Of course, there's the issue of putting a token on Decimators as well, which, had it been on this unit, what would my opponent have done differently? Obviously, he wouldn't have been able to just confidently stride forward with the zombies and just chill out here and expect to win the game. He would have had to do more to go after these Immortal Guard. So what he would have done, I'm not sure exactly, but it would be interesting to find out. If my opponent is watching this, feel free to comment on this video and let the people know what you would have done had the extra token been on the Immortal Guard and not on the Decimators, and whether that would have affected your game plan. So that is the end of the game. It is a win for the Undead, and we don't need Mr. Arrow anymore. So the Hexcaster I like. The weakness spell proved very useful at keeping my... Well, I say it proved useful, but sometimes when I used it, it was more of a deterrent to prevent the enemy from attacking my powerful units, which kind of works anyway. And it also does damage when it hits, which is very nice. There's also the option of taking the Hex spell on it, which is like a very long-range lightning bolt with the ability that it has to do damage, in addition to hexing casters. So I've got one Hexcaster coming in the Vanguard booster when that's released, and I've also ordered a model to use as another Hexcaster in case I want to run 2. So you'll see what that is when it arrives. You can look forward to that, because they're only very cheap, they're only 70 points, so I'm thinking I'm going to try them out as a duo soon, and maybe drop back to one Ironcaster. Bracky wasn't in this list. He's normally there. Did I miss him? To an extent. He's more useful for his very inspiring and the dread, and less so for the amount of attacks he has, because of course he only has 6. But his mobility as well is very useful. He's handy for combo charging with something if you can get him into a flank to prevent him being overrun into the other unit that's fighting. So I did miss him a little bit. He is expensive. Would I consider leaving him out for the second Ironcaster again? Well, it depends. It was hard to judge the Decimator Horde based on this game because I was a bit too aggressive with them in pushing them forward. I think I'd have to play with them a few more times to decide whether they're worth the points rather than regiments of Decimators, because of course when it's a Horde you can tie up all those shooting attacks just by charging into one unit rather than 2 different ones. So that's something to consider as well. There's the unlocks as well that a Horde gives you is different from 2 regiments, in addition to the price difference. So a lot of things to consider. There's also the fact that this bad boy is being worked on at the moment. This ancient winged half-breed, which you can get a pretty good view of there. You can see that I've actually taken the weapon off the rider because I think it's too flimsy, so he's just waving his fist in the air now. And I think I know what colours I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the scales in orange. When I say the scales, I mean like the big plate scales in orange, and the little scales are going to be in kind of very dark grey. So we'll see how that looks when it's done, and you can look forward to that. I'm also working on this Katsuchan rocket launcher as well, which I would probably run as another mortar at some point at the moment. I think that's just the better choice. Anyone still watching this, by the way, feel free to drop a comment before I disappear. So, what gaming goodness do I have coming up? Well, I'm going to be playing a few games on Saturday next week. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to get some different armies into play there. I'm thinking of using my Undead or Rordia there. Maybe ogres or goblins. I'm not sure about Abyssal Dwarfs. With the Abyssal Dwarfs, we're playing at 2,500 points, so it depends if I can get that flying beastie ready or not. If he's ready, then I'll probably want to get him out on the table in preparation for upcoming tournaments to see if he's actually useful and whether I would want to use him as the Ironcaster or as the Overmaster. They do both have pros and cons. One's an absolute combat beast. One, of course, has the Fireball spell and is a little bit cheaper. So I'm going to be looking at options for that. And I think that's all that there is for this battle report, folks. So, time to wrap this one up. Don't forget to leave any comments if you've spotted any rules that were played incorrectly. Of course, I'm sure you'll be all over that, but don't forget to comment on any tactics or moves that you saw in this video that you found interesting, or tips on certain positions, or interesting things that you picked up while watching this that maybe you didn't think of. And thoughts on the army lists as well, if you like. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description, all the various social media shenanigans, my Facebook group, and everything else down there. Don't forget to send me all your life savings so I can keep making battle reports. And I think all that remains to be said really is... What time is it? Well, it's the afternoon right now, so good afternoon out there, whatever you are.